Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to this session. I think I'm going to start up here, and at some point I might move into the Italian position. We will see. Um, yes, so I'm going to talk about drug design on quantum computers, or progress that has been made sort of to move towards that goal, because it's always sort of framed as one of the big applications of quantum computation. That's sort of one of the key features that quantum computers might provide. And we're going to dive deeper into this subject for the next 20 minutes to see, okay, what's the substance of this claim. Brief introduction about Boehringer Ingelheim. If you don't know us, what have you been doing? We're the largest pharmaceutical company in Germany. There's around like 50,000 employees worldwide, and we do research on, or like provide drugs for humans, for animals, and we recently ventured also into like biotech contract manufacturing. So we provide a whole host of services. And inside the company, there's a team of 5 quantum computing scientists like me who work on these problems. We do a lot of research projects with universities, startups, bigger players, like for example, Google Quantum AI. So you have like a wide range of portfolios ranging from research estimations, okay, how large or how long would these algorithms need to be run on what kind of sized machine. And then we also delve into algorithm development, looking at algorithms that are specific to our needs and use cases to sort of provide a first picture that other researchers then can take up and sort of tweak some knobs. I'm not going to name the 5 of us, but who I'm going to name are our 2 core enablers, Clemens Ucik, and Christopher Tautermann, who are like big help inside the company, which without them we couldn't do the work we do. If you've been to my panel, or I think this slide was also shown in some other talk yesterday, there's one big cost factor that pharma has, which is drug discovery. Everything else is cheap in comparison to this. So it's like this giant funnel of a lot of methods that go into this research. So you start out by identifying what is called a target, which is a molecular pocket, where you're looking for the one molecule of 10 to the 60 possible molecules that fits into this pocket, sort of inhibits this target, and doesn't kill you while doing that. And on the way to there, you sort of employ everything research has provided you. So there's computational methods and experimental methods from all sorts of research, ranging from biology, chemistry, yada, yada, yada. If we can use it, we will use it. And it's very expensive, and it's getting more expensive by the year of developing a drug and bringing it to market. So the lever we have in this case is pretty big. So our hope is that quantum computers can impact some of these methods or provide some more cost-effective way of finding potential new drugs. And the quantum team has existed for 4 years. So this is sort of looking at the funnel from a different axis. What kind of things are done sort of over the course of discovery from these drugs. We usually start off by imaging of tissues and then move into this more chemistry-related part where we do molecular dynamics simulations and binding affinity predictions. This is again sort of how well do these potential molecules fit into this target pocket, and then move on further into like upman properties prediction, which is sort of how chemicals move inside and then outside of the body again. And then we would also like to know if the potential drug is toxic in the end, which would rule it out as like a good drug. And in the beginning of our research, we focus, I don't know how good the gray is coming out. I guess you can see it into the first or like in the second and third bucket here, as it's sort of very much related to classical quantum chemistry methods, where the mapping of trying to model quantum chemistry on a quantum computer is fairly natural and is a fair starting point for research in this space. And sort of when you look at what the portfolio of current classical methods of sort of simulating these molecules have is you have like a range of methods that sort of have a trade-off in like how accurate are the results they provide and sort of how large the system is they can treat. So if you want to really model a large system, you can do like semi-empirical methods like force fields, and as you care sort of about more and more precise methods, you have to sort of narrow down the size of the problem you care about and sort of employ a more a more precise method, which then sort of runs for longer in this case. And usually the workhorse for all of this is DFT, as like most people, if you have a quantum chemistry background, you know. And then for really precise method results, there's also coupled cluster. And then the exact method or the exact solution can only be really done on a very small part of your molecule, which is called full CI. And we expect, sort of from the research estimates for quantum computing, is that quantum computing will really make an impact on this side of the fence, and probably provide a better method for coupled cluster, which provides more accurate results. But for DFT, because the overhead you have to pay in sort of running the quantum computers, they're not the fastest thing on the block. Sort of their clock cycle is pretty slow in compared to like classical methods. So this is the thing we look at the moment. What also is a caveat is the systems you want to treat in a quantum computer is because as long as classical methods provide a reasonable estimate to the energy, there's no need for a quantum computer. So there's these strongly correlated molecules, which essentially are just like a big list of things you could check to see, is my system hard or difficult for classical methods? So it's just this tech list, do classical methods fail? And if so, it's worthwhile sort of employing a quantum computer to look at the problem. And it turns out there's actually not that many of these systems, as they usually rely on having some transition metal around. In this case, it's iron. But we looked at what is referred to as P450 or the cytochrome P450, which is part of the heme group. So it's inside your liver, and it's mainly responsible for oxidizing a lot of the drugs you ingest. So it's metabolizing and sort of digesting the things you would like to put in the body. So it's, from our perspective, a fairly interesting reaction we would like to model, and it's something that's classically actually difficult. And this is some work we did with our collaborators at Google Quantum AI, where this is one of the first research estimates that was done on how large and how long these calculations would be. And 2 years ago, our set was we would need to earn like 4 million physical qubits. I guess I'm going down here again, which then sort of in the error correcting land results in like around 1,500 logical qubits. And then you have to do like 8 billion gates, which takes like 3 days of runtime, which is sort of the worst case scenario that we dig up 2 years ago. Just sort of as a side note here, because I didn't mention it earlier, everything in this talk will just be about error-corrected algorithms, as sort of our stance is that to treat industrially relevant problems, we will need an error-corrected machines, and there's not much to be done with like current tech NISQ machines. But just to give some comment about these numbers here, I mean, this is cool. It's cool that you can like give a number at all to treat these systems. But for like an industrial use case, it's still a bit slower. So this is sort of just a single point energy calculation you would have to do. Usually in classical computation, these are done like millions and billions of times to then sort of build up higher order statistics that you really care about. For example, like forces on the nuclei that sort of move into the machine, and you can do dynamics, and you can see, okay, does my molecule actually fit into some pocket? So you would need like a lot of these calculations. So 3 days of runtime is too long. But because it is too long, we went out over the last 2 years and employed sort of different methods to see, okay, can we improve on this estimate? And to give some context about sort of how these methods come to be is they rely on something that's called tensor hypercontraction, which if you know quantum chemistry, sort of what actually happens behind the scenes is there's this large matrix, or the tensor, let's call it a matrix for now, and then these techniques try to massage this matrix, the set of the problem, to sort of keep the original thing you care about, but make it more digestible for the quantum computer itself. So it comes up with the same result, or something that's very close to the same result, but costs way less. That's sort of the trick behind the scenes. And THC was for a long time the one to beat. And this is from unpublished work with PsyQuantum, which are like a large startup that built a photonic machine, where we employ a new technique we developed in another paper with another partner, where you can take out another chunk of this matrix which does not really add to the problem you care about. And then what you get are sort of the algorithmic improvements just from sort of setting up the problem in a nicer way, which reduces the size of the problem by like a factor of 1.13. But more importantly, what you really reduce down to is the Toffoli gate count, which is sort of a proxy for runtime. And there you get a run about a factor of 4 in runtime. So having had 3 days before, this would be now a bit under a day. But this is just the algorithmic improvements by sort of tweaking some numbers and taking out some symmetry sectors you don't really care about. But then what you can do is employ even more techniques that they're labeled as like active volume. They're just a very specific way of compiling your quantum circuits that map very naturally, I'd say, to photonic quantum computers. This is why we employed them here. And then essentially what you can do, maybe just to give some context, is if you see in this is how addition looks like in a quantum computer. And there's a lot of empty, idle volume that sort of does nothing while you sort of wait for the computation to finish. And active volume sort of allows you to sort of use this idle volume for something useful, usually for magic state distillation. And then we also include the previously mentioned improvements on the Hamiltonian side. And then you end up with something that looks a lot more digestible. Just to guide you through this table here, there's now different sized machines that are sort of PsiQuantum wants to build at some point in the future, which are sort of defined by their number of what is called research state generators. It's sort of like a qubit, just way bigger, and sort of the fundamental building block of a photonic quantum computer if you sort of use this scheme. And I wouldn't look at sort of these two plots because they're like unreasonably large sized quantum computers. But if you build one that's very, very big, you can get down the calculation time to like 45 seconds. But sort of I think the more reasonable estimates is over here, which I think somewhere in between an hour and 13 hours is a reasonably sized machine PsiQuantum can actually build by the end of the decade, which brings down the cost from 3 days to around something in between 13 hours and 1 hour. Still, from an industrially point of view, not fast enough, but for 2 years of progress, I think it's fairly substantial. Getting like a 30x in sort of just if you look at how things originally looked like on a photonic box, I think this is a fairly good speed up. And if you continue finding these speed ups, we might get things to a level where they might become a very useful industrial tool. But it's not as clear that this is the one application of quantum computers. Maybe that's the take-home message here. So just to recap some points here. A lot of the drug molecules we have are fairly small, or that don't contain a lot of like these difficult elements like iron. So they don't make particularly very good targets for quantum computation because classical methods usually get them fairly correct even without the help of a quantum computer. And the question is, are there more systems? Are we just simulating things we know how to do because we're sort of limited to the existing methods and we don't have anything else to explore? So maybe we can open up a new space of like chemical space where we didn't have the tools so far before. And furthermore, because usually people just look at ground state energies for a good reason, because it's a very well-defined problem. It's informationally well studied, so it's like a good testing ground for your algorithm. But it's not enough. We don't really care about ground state energies. We want to do forces and excited states, yada, yada, yada. And they all sort of employ this as a basic technique, but of just looping over this doesn't seem fast enough at the moment from these sort of estimates. So what we also try to do is sort of do more involved quantum algorithms where we directly extract, for example, forces or excited states from the quantum computer, and maybe even do dynamics on chip coherently. But this is beyond the scope of this talk. I hope this was somehow or somewhat informative and you learned something. There is a QR code linked to one of our studies, or like one of our perspectives in nature physics. And if there are any questions, please go ahead and ask them. Thank you for your attention.